Welcome to Life Expressions. I'm your host, Charie Ginete Ilon. In this episode, we're diving into the transformative power of education and entrepreneurship with Pauline Stevenson, founder of Excel Career College and regional ambassador of WeBC. From helping adults reclaim their career path to empowering women in business, Pauline has spent decades building futures with purpose and compassion. Get ready to be inspired by her leadership, innovation, and community impact journey. Welcome to Life Expressions, Pauline.
Thank you so much, Charie. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to have you here on the podcast. Pauline, what inspired you to start Excel Career College, and what was the need that you were trying to address many, many years ago when you started it?
Well, it's an interesting question, Charie, because it wasn't this big thunderbolt. I was working in an accounting firm, and one of my main roles was to computerize businesses' accounting records and implement their first ever computer in their office in many cases, and then train the staff. And there was a huge transition in the early 80s, 83, 84. So I was incredibly busy doing this. So busy that my clients, I was like a doctor. Your time is up, and I'd move on. And my clients continuously were asking for additional classroom time instead of me just doing one-on-one. And, it took probably several dozen comments like that for me to actually go, there's a need. And so on the side of my desk, I started doing classroom training. So it was side hustle, if you will, and really focused on professional development. So it was clear, very, very, very clear to me what those clients needed at that time. Right? And it was a bit polar focused. So the start of Excel was not with the intention to start a college. It was to bring this new age of computers more comfortably into the life of business people and introduce them and demystify and make it a usable tool. And then, as it happens so many times, my side hustle became my main focus. And I left the accounting firm. And by the way, I left reluctantly. It was that job that trying to leave brought me to tears, right? I loved my job so much, but I felt like this was very much in line a calling. So as I was pursuing this and still working on that professional development piece, very much around accounting, because that was my specialty, the government, the federal government, in the way they worked at that particular time, identified that they had a population on their unemployment roster that were lacking computer skills, thereby making it difficult for them to apply for new jobs. So they asked if I would develop curriculum in order to do a full-time training program. And every business person will talk about the glory days. These were the glory days because they were paying me to build a college. It still hadn't occurred to me that would be the evolution. They were paying me to build this, and they were sending me the clients paid for. So by the time it finally occurred to me that I should go through the process to register as a college, I already had the programs developed and the successful track record. So it was a beautiful opportunity that got presented to me. So
That was amazing.
yes. So it was a great time, and that doesn't exist anymore, but I was really fortunate to be active at that particular moment in time.
Undoubtedly, Excel Career College grew through the years, but looking back, what were the biggest challenges you faced when you started the college, and how did you overcome them?
Well, Charie, I was a very young woman, so there was ageism and there was also gender-based bias. And I am one of those business women that faced really strong barriers in the business community. I was a woman that was on the other side of the desk at a banker's office who said, well, I can't I can't finance you because you're of childbearing age.
Yeah.
And you'll probably just walk away from your business when you get pregnant. So that was, a huge barrier.
Very
And it
unfair.
developed, it was really interesting. And I don't know if this will resonate with any women who have been in business for many years. It led to a distrust and almost a fear of the lender community. It's only in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years being with WeBC, which is a lending, that I was able to say that that doesn't serve me anymore, and that I'd grown past it. But
Yeah.
I had to come face to face with the fact that I didn't like lenders, and I had this distrust.
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty sure I'm not alone, that starting out at that particular time and facing that kind of bias left me with a very strong opinion.
How did you overcome that? Like, I'm sorry, you were
Well,
saying?
that was a huge challenge, right? And one that we can identify with because we are moving past that. There were others, of course, but how did I get past it? I got past it when I no longer needed financing, you know? Um, and then recognize that it was old information that I was holding on to that didn't serve me well. So it was important to let go of it, especially when I'm coaching women. And I recognize that we, broad brushstroke, tend to be more debt adverse.
Yeah.
And I know how to read financial statements. And so I could justify how increasing your liability could also increase your bottom line, your net income, by generating more revenue. So I understood those equations, and it didn't reconcile well with this fear because I understood how important it is
Yeah.
to understand debt.
It is important to understand that, right? Like you, as someone who has knowledge in accounting, would be able to truly understand that. But yeah, many are debt adverse and wouldn't want to take that risk. But let's go back a little bit to Excel Career College before we move on to you being the regional ambassador of WeBC. What was the first mission of Excel Career College when you started, and how did your mission evolve during the 35 years that led to the eventual sale of the college?
Wow. The original mission was very much because it was still professional development. It was really about providing the relevant skills that were required to feel good and be successful back in their workplace. And Charie, because that was the beginning and that was the foundation, it held its course for those 35 years. It changed a little bit, but that passion for the relevancy, and how that translates is not starting with an educational focus, starting with more of a coaching focus. So building based on their job description, building based on successful people in the field of study, as opposed to starting with intro 101. We would start more from the end result and build the pathway to that. And one of the metaphors that I just love is, instead of having chapter 1, you're going to learn to hit this baseball. Chapter 1 is going to be about velocity. Chapter 2 is going to be about trajectory. And chapter 3 is going to be about speed. Okay. One model. We would take the model where we would go to a field, put a bat in the hand, and say, try this, and lift the elbow up. So much more experiential,
Yeah.
much more relevant, so that you're feeling like you're in the role immediately. And that led to some really unique and successful programming that had meaning not only to the learner, but also to the employer, because our mission was to help people into jobs. It
Yeah.
wasn't about this piece of paper. The piece of paper was meant to celebrate that they had achieved their goals. But the real win was when they were in that job that they wanted, that they hoped to be in, or that they maybe didn't even believe that they could achieve. And
Yeah.
here they were.
Yeah, that's like your model was helping the students or the learners learn by doing, as you have said, experiential learning.
Absolutely. And learning what was important. We know that some of the most relevant and robust and meaningful learning happens on the job. So encouraging lifelong learning was a big part of it. We wanted them to be able to get that job and continue learning. So as much as possible, we wanted to simulate that workplace so that that culture of learning continued once they were placed.
I'm sure you have lots of success stories about students who did not just get into their job, but excelled in it and perhaps led in their jobs. Can you share at least one story with us?
I'm having trouble deciding which one. One that had an ending very recently, or has a glimpse into 30 years later, was just fascinating. And here in the Comox Valley, there are beautiful hiking trails. And I was walking through a hiking trail one day, and probably incognito, with the baseball cap, who would recognize me? And I'm walking along and I hear, "Pauline? Is that you?" And I turn around and it's a student. I won't mention her name because I haven't got permission. A student that I just resonated with when she was in class. And I'm talking 30 years ago. And I was a big part of her program because it was accounting.
Yeah.
So I run into her 30 years later and I got a recap on her career. So she said, "Pauline, did you know that her employer, I won't mention his name, just recently retired? And I was with him the entire 30 years that he was in practice. He was an accountant in a small office. I placed her on her practicum, and she worked with him for 30 years and had grief about the fact that he had retired in this beautiful career story, and had now gone on to her second job 30 years later and said it's just not the same. They had this incredible relationship that really goes beyond employer-employee. And I just think it touched me in such a big way that in the forest, that connection that I had 30 years ago and over time at different points, we had still connected, but to get this encapsulated view of the impact it had on her life was just remarkable. I felt so fortunate to be able to get that replay.
Yeah, that's great. Pauline, as a regional ambassador for WeBC, how do you support and mentor women entrepreneurs now?
Well, as a regional ambassador, my biggest job is to let more women know about the resources and services that are provided by the organization. So I connect them to the ecosystem. I do also mentor and facilitate programming, but as a regional ambassador, my real role is giving a personal approach to WeBC, trying to filter out the noise and ensure that women entrepreneurs know about this organization, because it's meant to serve all of British Columbia. So it's really important for me to be in communication and create partnerships with referral people. So Community Futures, bankers, Chamber of Commerce, the Women's Business Network is a huge partnership so that the women who could benefit know about these services. Most of them are free
Yeah.
or incredibly invested by the government. So an amazing resource. And we're celebrating, WeBC has been in business serving British Columbia for 25 years. And when we look at the map of British Columbia and we put red dots on
Yeah.
where we have had an impact, where we've served a client, it is not provincial. Like, it's not spread evenly around the province. It has more of an impact where there's a head office or a office. And now for the past 5 years, where there is a regional ambassador. So we know we're effective, right? We know that by having a human being promoting and carrying the organization with us wherever we go, that we are actually reaching more women.
Yeah.
but we're still wanting to get that awareness to every corner of the province. So I'm really excited that we're going to be rolling out a new program
What
that,
new program is that?
well, I don't know that I'm allowed to mention the name, but wow, you know what? It's going to be launched really soon. It's going to be called the Pollinator Program. And we have a very we grow together approach at WeBC. So it fits into that gardening theme that our vision is to empower women who are either aware of or who would like to become more aware of WeBC, and they carry it forward. And then we're right now coming up with the value add that we can offer those pollinators and create a richer community within this ecosystem. So I've been talking to entrepreneurs, and mentorship is a big part of it. Charie, I
Yes.
don't know if you hear that on a
Yeah,
daily basis,
for
but
sure.
the women who have traveled the path, who have some history, are eager to share. We want to give back. We want to make the road a little bit less lonely
Yes.
and make it easier to hit those hurdles, to get over them and get your stride and believe. So there's a strong desire to provide mentorship, and there's an awareness for those who are either launching their career or changing or growing to seek mentorship.
Yes.
So from the time that I started to now, there's a
Mhm.
huge, huge difference
Mhm.
in how we understand how we can have a female gendered lens that
Yes.
is more accurate. So we know that women learn and appreciate storytelling. Like that's a huge part of our.
True. Earlier, Pauline, you mentioned that two of the biggest challenges that you've faced in the early days of your business were ageism and gender bias. What do you think are the biggest barriers women face today, especially in rural or smaller communities?
I think there's more competition that um finding their niche is maybe a bit more challenging today. And some of the same ones that we faced 35 years ago are still true. And when we think about that gender lens, we recognize that women tend to have this strong double bind. And what I mean by that is we're still the caregiver, right? So we're still pulled to our children, right? We're still pulled to the business, and we're stretched. I don't know if you could find a businesswoman who is not really stretched. Charie, at this point in my life, I'm trying to unlearn that busyness. I learned it
Yeah.
by
Yes.
experience, and now I'm trying to unlearn it. So balancing and women and men,
Yeah.
this new business person that's out there is eager to create a work-life balance. We did what we needed to do because it was an employer's market in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so we buried our needs. And I can remember trying to be gender neutral,
Mhm.
right? Like not talking about anything feminine at all because I got the opportunity to sit at the table. So I am not going to rock a boat. I am not going to react. And that doesn't hold true anymore, or at least less so,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We're saying we're allowed to be authentic, and being a feminine woman is really okay. It's
That is
great.
true.
It's
Yes.
awesome.
We have to embrace our being a woman.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
and use it to our advantage if we can. But speaking of balance, how do you personally balance business leadership with advocacy and community service?
And that's hard, Chari. I think it's important to bring in that word authenticity. And I remember doing some things because I thought it would be good for my resume. And, they became stressors, right? They became something you had to do, and it was harder to feel balanced. My involvement with WeBC is a passion. It's an opportunity it's a vehicle for me to do what I'm meant to do anyway. So it's not a stressor, and it's not a negative. It's something I show up for as me. And I think that's really important. If you want to have work-life balance, choose wisely.
Yes.
Things that create a true partnership within yourself. You're giving, but it's also filling up who you are and what your purpose is in life. So if you're doing what you love, it doesn't feel out of balance.
Yeah. What's important is you have to be authentic to yourself and the people around you.
And that can take time, right? You know the phrase, it's from probably the Ace, fake it till you make it. And that really got sent to the back burner. However, I'd like to bring it back a little bit, because when we're envisioning and when we're creating our business, there's part of us that isn't there yet. We're manifesting still. We're growing. So there is a part to look at our future self and take some risks. Be courageous.
Yeah.
Be that successful person before you get to the next goal. Live with that success as early as you possibly can. So if it's not faking it, it's embracing
Yes.
your future success.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
bringing that into your life early. And then at some point, it is much more comfortable, and it is your authenticity.
Mhm.
And some things we get wrong, right? I remember, Charie, thinking, I'm going to be, boss woman.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to take it. I don't know what that energy was at that particular time, but that never became part of me. It
Mhm.
was awkward and wrong and not part of who I really was.
Yes.
So, if it doesn't become part of your authentic makeup, you let it go.
Yeah.
But passion of mine is to encourage a change in some of the current wording, and that is around anxiety. I can remember some times where I was so riddled with anxiety that it actually gave me physical symptoms,
Yeah.
fight or flight symptoms.
Yeah.
Actually, I had to ask my boss to pull over one time because I was fearful I would vomit. I was so nervous about a job I had presenting to the hospital board, and I looked 12 years old. I looked really young at that time. So, I'm so grateful that what happened was that I had a supportive person around me, and his words of wisdom were cool and aloof, Pauline. And
Cool
so
and
I
aloof.
tried to be cool and aloof. That's one thing that I became aware of. I'm not cool and I'm not aloof. However, the wording was just come in with your professional veneer.
Yeah.
And Charie, at that time, I didn't use the word anxiety. I used the word I'm really nervous.
Nervous. Yeah.
I'm very anxious, and it allowed me to not have an insurmountable barrier. It became a choice. I'm going to do this even though it feels awful right now.
True.
And now I get to say, wow, I had a lot of courage. So with my children, when they say, oh, I have a lot of anxiety, no, I have anxiety about that. I say, it sounds like you're very anxious about that. And maybe right now is not the right time. It may be too much, but that level of anxiousness doesn't stay static.
Yeah.
So, keep revisiting it, because there may
Yeah.
be a time that you are full of courage, and that feeling, that level of anxiousness or nervousness is less because of some other experience you had. So
Yeah.
it may just not be today, because I just don't want us to put up barriers that may not be permanent.
True. Yeah.
And there's nothing that feels better than being courageous. It's way better than
Yeah.
than the negative of the anxious
Yeah.
feelings. I
Correct.
love every time I was able to find my courage.
Yeah.
So I know that's a risky topic because some people truly do have a level of anxiety that
Yeah.
is a barrier. But if it's not a permanent barrier, don't make it a permanent barrier.
Pauline, what leadership principles have guided you through your journey?
You know, when I was recognized publicly as a leader, I had to think about that because um I felt like I was just being me, right? Why me? Why would I be recognized? And in fact, that's one of the reasons that I think that I know my leadership mattered is because I built safety, right? I would connect really authentically. I love relationships. I love any part of a person's growth, particularly businesswomen that, I am drawn to that and I get excited about it. So there's a truth in that and it creates a safety. And when a person is able to feel safe, you don't have to manipulate. They want to come along the journey. One of the hardest things about retiring is not connecting with these individuals. So of course I am connecting and keeping those relationships alive. But like the woman in the woods,
Yeah.
the reason that it mattered for her to call me was because of that relationship, that safety.
Yes.
One other thing is I feel like I have special goggles. And, I see when a person talks to me about where they want to go, it's as though I already see them there.
Wow.
And when I hold fast to that vision, especially when I have time with them, when the relationship is going to last for a period of time, when I hold fast to that vision, it resonates that I believe that they are there. And when you believe in someone, they want to be part of that journey. So I needed leadership to be as easy as possible. So the best way was to just be me and to develop ways around some of the harder tasks. I had to build some strategies for the hard conversations and the difficult situations. I had to have strategies that I would put on like a jacket or tools in my tool belt. And they were important parts of my leadership um in some of the negative aspects, when you have to let somebody go or you have
Yeah.
to discipline. But the biggest part was the positive. I believe that you're
Yeah.
going to create the right kind of team if there's a community feel around it, if you're seen, if
Yeah.
you're understood, if you're cared about.
Yeah. What's great about what you shared is how you have that goggles, that you see the person for what he or she can become already when they tell you what they want to be and you see them as that already. Like it, you help them win because believing in someone helps them win. And so, Pauline, what advice would you give someone starting an initiative? Starting maybe a business or an initiative. What would be your advice to them?
I would start with the why. Ask yourself, what's it going to feel like? Often we start off with these definitions like, I want to own this business. I want to start this kind of business. I want to be the best soap maker ever. And I want to be the biggest soap maker ever. And it's so important to dig into what that means. What's it going to feel like? What are you willing to give up so that there's space and time for that? When you feel really proud, if you get into your head and you envision you're already there, why do you feel successful? What just happened? Is it because you're creating a team around you? Maybe soap is just the means to being in a team that you're growing and that you're empowering future soap makers to grow. It's so important to get to that why. And it's really, really hard. It's not an easy exercise because from my own experience, starting off young and I just wanted to be this big businesswoman, making it in the business world. 7 different campuses, small and big, temporary and permanent, going at the same time. And that should have, in that original thought, been the pinnacle of success, right?
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all, Charie. I was in the car driving. This is before we had this kind of platform.
Yeah.
But I was in the car driving, having superficial conversations because they were fleeting from one place to the other. I didn't like it at all. So I had to rework my business and find a way to make it actually uh, my real definition of success, which I had to figure out what it was. And it was about more around that, being able to have some work-life balance and to sleep at night and have relationships. So that why, that true why, when we can bring it down to what impact we're having and why it feeds us, I think that fills up that tenacity bucket.
Yeah.
It helps us keep going when, as we all know, there are ups and downs and turnarounds,
Mhm.
and it takes some fortitude to get through those.
Yeah.
So if you're focused on your why, you're much more likely to have that.
Yeah. And succeed. Yeah. What's next for you, Pauline?
Well, I've got this mission to unlearn some of the things that I learned along the way. And unlearning is just as hard as learning.
Mm-hmm.
Reading a book for pleasure, Charie. Like, how I'm learning to do that without guilt. My goodness, I have been on vacation mode and I've got more of that coming. And I said to my husband, how is it possible that my life is this good? How is it this good? And, he's very encouraging to say, this is what we should build into our exit strategy. This is what, this is a big part of the why.
Yeah.
So, Charie, there's a big part of my life right now that is curious, and that's really fun. I'm curious about what's next, and I'm comfortable saying it might be very small. It might be very simple, but it's going to have a ton of joy and a lot of fun. It's going to be very healthy. It's certainly going to have important relationships. And, I'm still going to be on a quest that I was put on by the late, beautiful, Right Honorable Iona Caponolo. She was a guest speaker at an event, and this woman gave me a new piece of knowledge. She changed the way I thought about things. We call that a paradigm shift sometimes.
Yeah. Yes.
And she ignited a passion for being on a path that supports more women to be in leadership. And she was an incredibly smart, passionate, successful woman. And she used the word world peace in a way that made sense to me. And she said, the only way that we're going to find world peace, and it's not going to be in my lifetime, and it's not going to be in your lifetime, but as long as we're on the path towards world peace, there's going to be gender equality in the leadership roles at the highest level. So in the decision-making of countries, of decision-making about the world, I'm on a quest for world peace, and I carry this baton proudly, thanks to, the world lost a beautiful soul, but she touched people, and she
Yeah.
gave me a baton. She didn't
Yeah.
know she was giving me that baton. She was putting it out to the audience,
Yeah.
right? But I carry that baton and I hope that I get to pass it. And maybe in my grandchildren's life that they actually believe that it's going to happen. So
That's beautiful.
that'll never leave me. That'll be, on my gravestone. She sought world peace.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's beautiful. But
I get
yeah.
emotional about it because when you figure out what makes you tick,
Yes.
it's a beautiful thing. You have your own personal relevancy.
Yes.
And so I don't need a title or status to be able to go out in the world and carry that badge quietly, but hopefully powerfully, and leave a better wake. You know what I mean? Like
Yes, for
a better
sure.
trail for
Yes.
others to travel on. And
That's
women have a history of, there's a word catty.
mhm.
That is changing. And I would like to think that I am one speck of moisture that went into one drop of the ocean that is creating this new world
Yeah.
where we are part of lifting. And I think that through mentorship and storytelling, we're seeing this trend
Yes.
of women lifting other women. And it is beautiful. So I can say for certain, Charie, that in my professional life, I have seen change. I have seen positive change, and it is wonderful. So we need more women to carry those batons that beautiful woman, Iona Capanolo, our first female lieutenant governor, she threw out the batons, and I'm paraphrasing because she didn't even use
Yeah.
that term, but I picked one up. We need to keep throwing those batons out.
And I'd gladly pick one too.
Let's measure the change. Let's
Yes.
keep it going. We see way more women in business today, Charie, but we
Yes.
still see, I think it's 10% female representation in Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
So there's so much more to go, and there's so much more to help the business mothers.
Yeah.
They're still stretched too thin. And I have no answers. I don't know what it is, but certainly for my women children, I'm going to be there to help them and support them because we need them. We need them in business, and we need them to be the mothers that they strive to be.
That's wonderful, Pauline. I'm very touched with what you've shared today with me and this podcast. Finally, if you could give one advice to your younger self, what would that be?
We hear about imposter syndrome, and certainly there's probably a picture of me in the dictionary, like so many women that had to overcome that. I was okay. I didn't have to become okay. I was okay. And I didn't know that for a long, 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 long time. So I would have said I'm okay. I don't know if that would resonate with a young woman. Maybe take a look at what imposter syndrome is and start pushing back against it, earlier than when you have to relearn some stuff or you've spent time hiding, not fully showing up. Like I used to not smile, Charie, because I have a crooked tooth. And then it's like, how do I not smile? That is who I am.
Yes.
So I spent years doing this.
No.
I know. So, finding out that you're okay,
Yeah.
and encouraging that kind of community with your children and with your mentees and with the people that look to you for advice is really seeing them
Yes.
and allowing that to be okay. You're okay. I see that you want to go somewhere and you want to create this elevated self. Great. Go for it. But you're okay now too.
Yeah, wonderful. That's great. To the woman out there listening, you are okay. You are loved, you are special, you are enough, and you are valued. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Pauline, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you. Your story reminds us that when we lead with purpose, when we are authentic, we appreciate ourselves and we create a positive change. We don't just create it, we also see it. And I thank you for your time. And if you like this episode, please share it with your network and hit subscribe for Life Expressions. Thank you so much again. Pauline Stevenson is my guest. Believe in lifelong learning, and we create ripple effects that change lives. I leave you with this quote: education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. From William Butler Yeats. Until next time, I'm your host, Charie Ginete Ilon. Keep learning, keep leading, and keep igniting your spark. Hold that baton for world peace.